Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special panel. And it's also part of my YouTube channel and the Social Wave Project podcast. But we're going to be doing a very special panel today because I know we haven't really done this for a long time, but we're going to be doing a three-part series on the topic of puberty in an autistic perspective. So in this first part, we've got these really lovely people. We have a Connor Ward, we have a Finn McGwyre, we have a Dana Anderson, we have a Robin, and we have a Michael. Hi, guys! Oh, sorry, you could turn all your microphones off for a minute.
That wasn't the instruction. The instruction was keep your microphones off the entire time.
Oh, no, that was doing like the statement to it. Sorry, guys. Sorry, I should have made it a bit clear. I did do something to explain earlier before recording, but silly me, forgot my brain. So we got all these wonderful guests joining us today, and I know that puberty is a little bit of a sensitive or a taboo subject, but these guys have been so amazing to come on forward and to actually start talking about it, and some of you actually jumped on at the last minute as well, so that is really fantastic to see each and every one of you. But I know that I won't go too big on what to say because we got to introduce you lovely lot.
So yeah, my name is changed to Robin. I go by they them pronouns, which is still getting used to. I enjoy a lot of films and things, and yeah, I'm currently non-binary, transmasculine. I'm going through transition in September with hormones. So yeah.
So my name's Finn. I'm 18 years old. I make videos on YouTube all about autism and just a lot of my experiences about it. I've talked at the Autism Show before, and going forward, I'm hopefully doing a few more talks in the future. So that's just kind of what I do.
Hi, my name's Connor Ward. I am an autistic speaker, neurodiversity consultant, trainer, ex-social media /current / I need to get on with it. I basically just work in whatever field I can to try and improve the lives for fellow autistic people. I do a lot of challenging of the existing structures that exist in our society because they aren't built very inclusively. And I've had the privilege of working with people like the National Autistic Society all the way to Strictly Come Dancing. So quite a random span. Yeah.
And don't forget about Disney.
Yeah.
Because I know Disney's your big thing with the relaxed performances as well. So I was kind of a bit shocked, like, don't forget about Disney.
Strictly Come Dancing was a relaxed performance, so yeah.
Oh, that's true, especially with the Strictly Come Dancing coming up as well.
Hi, I'm Dana. I've spent the last year or so making YouTube videos about being autistic and being late diagnosed, especially, and women with autism and all of that stuff. I'm not quite as fancy as the other people here that talk about it all, but I have recently done a level 2 in understanding autism, so I feel like I've got some degree of a credential under my belt for it.
Oh, that's good. Good for you, Dana. That's fantastic.
I'm Michael. I'm 18. I'm autistic. My type of autism is Asperger's syndrome. I am a singer-songwriter, so I do a lot of my own original songs and song covers, and I'm also a YouTuber, and I also do an interview series that interview many different people, including autistic people.
Today, I know that you guys are the very first part of the series, so we're going to try and keep it relaxed as much as we can, but this panel is designed to have the idea of just opening up about puberty, just to explain what experiences, how do you feel about puberty with itself, what experiences you went through, and how the topic puberty can be more inclusive in mainstream and specialist schools as well. During a panel, for those who haven't really watched before, the panel is going to be something like an open conversation, and to run the panel, I'm going to open each conversation with a statement. So a statement is not like a question, but it's just like an open conversation. And what I do is that when I actually say a statement, everyone can go one at a time just to talk about their experiences. And I know I've done this differently within panels before, but I'm going to try and make it relaxed as much as I can. And yeah, I think without further ado, we'll get into it. So the very first statement is, when I started puberty, I felt embarrassed about the changes which are happening inside my body. Inside my body. Yeah, I think we're going to go with that because I think I had a bit of a hiccups.
I don't think for me it was particularly embarrassed, because I think, well, embarrassment is a very intense emotion. It wasn't embarrassment. It was the lack. It was uninformed, is what it was. Because I was one of the people that, like, I wasn't diagnosed autistic at that age. I had no extra support in that area. I just got all the innuendos and such that you get in school about, oh yeah, you know, this stuff is going to happen. It might be like this, which meant that when I approached puberty, you know, there were things that did confuse me because I didn't fully understand them. So yeah, confusion was more empowering for me than embarrassment, because embarrassment is very much how it felt for other people, but I was too concerned with my own confusion.
I think maybe it's slightly different between like men and women, because for me it's like being a girl and starting periods and all of that stuff, it was crippling embarrassment all the time, and the constant fear that like embarrassment was on its way and something was going to go wrong. I was definitely like constantly embarrassed about everything through puberty.
I think for me, well, in school, like yeah, I think obviously it's like it's all about like PSHE and blah 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 blah. But I think for me, as a person, I've dealt with it, and obviously as a singer, obviously sort of puberty affects being a singer as well, because obviously I'm autistic, so obviously sometimes it's like, what does that mean? But also as a singer, it obviously like changed my like voice and things. So I mean, like, you know, I can still do like a very sometimes high range voice, but obviously I went from like, you know, like being able to do high still to being able to do like a very certain type of high like pitch in my singing. So in that sense, it was like, oh god. But you know, I just live with it and just deal with it.
I had emotional support or support to help me before and after I started puberty.
I think in terms of the kind of support that's offered during that time, well, I think it's probably unanimous that there isn't enough given towards autistic people in that time. We do specific work to looking at transition periods for autistic people, whether that's moving from school into university, moving out, retiring, etc. There's many different transition periods throughout our lives, and the transition periods for autistic people are normally the highest points of stress and anxiety. And puberty is one of them. Puberty is one of the largest ones, and it's one of the ones that happens simultaneously to many of the other transition points. So any kind of transitional support wasn't there. Would have been nice, but yeah, just kind of explaining this is how things have been, this is how things will be after. We can't give you exact timelines as to when, but there's an expectation at least, so you've got some sort of idea as to what could potentially happen. So what's your answer?
Oh, my answer? Okay. Didn't expect actually to go in there. Okay, I need to retrace my steps, because I think with like the emotional support, I really cannot remember, because being in your late 20s, it's really hard to remember. But I did get support at school. I was in a mainstream school, but it's a girls' Catholic school as well as mainstream. But the learning support department the school had a special educational needs department, and I know that I didn't really get the help I was hoping to during my time at school. But one of the things that I'm so grateful for was helping me to actually go through the changes of puberty. So for instance, it's like how to use sanitary products, what to do in an emergency situation, what you're gonna have and what are you going through during this transition and this time. And then also I had massive support at home. But I think with the emotional support, I'm not really too sure, but the support, absolutely. I think it's one of the things I'm really, really grateful for the teachers and assistants for.
I think I just want to add on with the emotional support, the changes of like mood swings and things, because I found being autistic that it kind of like, it was a bit of a delay, and then it started to balance out when I got into my early 20s. But I felt like my mood swings with my transition of puberty was later than other people that weren't autistic as well. And I think with the normal changes, obviously you had classes and things with other related things to do with the body and that. But I think for girls and boys, you wasn't really told like a change would happen, and you're like, oh, what's that? And then I think it was connecting with other people as well. Talking about your experiences with other people going through it, it kind of helped a little bit.
Yeah, in terms of support, with being diagnosed at 7, all throughout my time at school, I was at a mainstream school, but for the majority of my time being at school, I was offered a lot of support, but I never really ever learned about what that support entailed, just because I pushed it all away. I didn't really want to stand out from anyone else. Being in a mainstream school, I would have, been standing out getting that support. So I kind of pushed it all away. So of course I never actually knew what that support was. But then coming to the puberty side of things, once again, of course, I would have pushed that support away just like I did for the rest of my time. But I don't ever remember being offered support when it came to that kind of thing. I remember there being classes with whole groups of people, and they're telling us like one thing as a whole, but no one was really taken aside and told something different or explained it in a different way, that they understand. It was just described to everyone as bulk in a way that they kind of just hope everyone understands, when it really doesn't quite work like that.
Just to pick up on something you said, Saz, actually, you mentioned that your school had a SEND department, and that creates a valid point as to why so many autistic people are missed in having support services in school. Only 44 to 52% of autistic people have a learning difficulty on top of being autistic, meaning that for ease, let's just say 50%, there's 50% of the autistic population that aren't being covered by those kind of special educational needs services, because they're exclusionary in some way, or they've been overlapped and merged and confusion. Either way, massive chunk being missed there. The other thing which kind of picks up on both points Robin and Finn were saying, in terms of peer support, you're not given the language as to how to appropriately talk about and understand these things with your peers, with your friends, because you're given lessons all of these ambiguous metaphorical terms that are all innuendous, etc. And particularly in teenage culture, you get loads of people wanting to use these innuendos, meaning that it's actually pretty hard to have a serious conversation to ensure that it's fully understood as to what is the that's how we create understanding. We check with our peers, we check that we're on the same level. However, it's hard to do that if everyone's talking in innuendos. You can't understand the innuendos in the first place. So I think that's a massive thing that happens.
That's definitely true there, Connor. I didn't really know about the percentages, really. That's really interesting. I'm definitely going to have to do some further research into that. That was just, it took me completely by surprise. I had a hard time understanding my body and sexuality.
I think that understanding my body and my sexuality were the toughest things for me during puberty, because I went to a Catholic school as well, and my parents are both very awkward, so nothing was explained to me. I got given the odd little book or pamphlet or whatever else, and that was how I had to figure everything out. And then I'd Google the odd thing and be absolutely horrified by whatever terrible tales were online. And then when it came to the sexuality side of things, I tried very hard to reach out to various charities and organisations and little clubs and the like. And in some ways it was incredible, and it was amazing to be around like-minded people, and there were definitely a lot of other neurodivergent people there too. But I definitely didn't know what my sexuality was doing or what was going on. So I was very much like, I think I'm bisexual, and got a lot of, oh, well, you'll choose a side, you'll figure it out. And that was probably one of the most damaging things that was told to me throughout all of my puberty experience.
Actually, Dana, you remind me of like well, I used to actually work at a youth centre, like a club for teenagers, and I remember that they had every single pamphlets or leaflets about puberty and sexual changes going through and sexual health as well. So it was really interesting that that it was really picked up there for that point. But yeah, Connor, do you want to add on to this?
Yeah, so to just once again mention the ambiguous language stuff. This may play with YouTube demonetization, so apologies. If you touch your thing down there and wiggle it about, stuff will come out. That's all you're told. How are you meant to understand that? What is that meant to mean? Obviously, we're all, smirking now because as adults, we do know what it means. However, as a teenager, you don't, because it's not explicitly stated, it's not shown. And that can lead to not only physical problems, but psychological problems because of the impact. It further, things like that can further separate the understanding between yourself and your peers and further alienate you. And that's not what you want to do. And on the point of sexuality, there's this whole culture of teenagers, raging hormones. Yeah, you're meant to get your girlfriend straight away. That's what you're meant to do. You're meant to be walking around thinking, oh yeah, she's fit, blah, blah, blah. That's what you're meant to do. You're meant to be raging with your sexuality in whatever way it's meant to be. And I had the thing that interests were apparently a dictation as to what my sexuality should be, which has not. But it's like, oh, but you like, you said you like High School Musical. It's like, that means you must be gay. It's like, well, no, I like musicals. Thank you. And that kind of thing, isn't helping just the general social development, particularly in autistic people, of people making assumptions about you based upon facts that aren't brought out. So it's a major thing that happens within the autistic population, only amplified in that sexuality discussion, I feel.
I think with the question, obviously, came out recently in my early 20s as transgender, and obviously you're taught in sex education and stuff that it's just man and a woman and all that, but you never hear the terms outside of that. So I had no idea what transgender was. I also found out I was gay after I was in a straight relationship. So it would have been kind of nice, because I think as well, you don't seem to find out your, like my sister's 16 and she's still figuring out like her feelings and things. And I think people don't go into detail of your experience. Like some people will be into people, some people won't. There's different ages where you'll figure yourself out, sort of thing.
I was bullied throughout puberty. And this is just one example of this, and I won't go into too much detail for it. The one example of this is that a friend of mine who used to know someone at school years ago, she got bullied because the bullies decided to tip her bag on the floor and they would open her sanitary products just for a joke. And I know that's just one example of this, but has like anyone had experiences that and Dana, yes, go on.
I've had that exact experience so many times, and I think the thing that really annoyed me was the way that other girls would giggle. And it's like, how it is, like, how unnecessary and ridiculous it is to like laugh and joke and be rude about clean sanitary products that I might need later that you've just wasted. And I think that it's funny to just be rude to people as a teenager. Like, it's the funniest time to just be a horrible person, combined with the worst things sort of just happening to you. And it was just terrible. And combined with like just general bullying, especially because I grew up overweight. So there was a lot of just fat shaming and just horrible behavior in regards to that. It's the time that you're probably the most vulnerable because everything's changing and everything's different. And especially being autistic, the last thing I want is things to change and be different. So then to also be made to feel I almost felt like it was my own fault, and like I would brought it on myself by going through the changes of puberty and by needing to have sanitary products in my bag and things like that. It was like it was my own fault almost.
Oh, that's really awful, Dana. I'm really sorry you had to go through that. That was absolutely awful.
So I didn't actually realise fully that I'd experienced bullying until after I'd left school. Because for me, what it was actually was the subtleties in how people were bullying. It was things that I just thought people were joking about. It's like, no, they were just being deadly horrible and you just weren't realising what they were actually saying. Because kids are cruel. And one of the things that is pretty common in autistic people at that age, in that puberty age, in that transition age, is the disparity in what our interests are. Because, so say, well, Lego, let's take Lego of mine. At that time, it wasn't cool for a 14-year-old to still be into Lego. And therefore, I felt the wrath of that when I had my minifigures pulled out of my bag, like, you've got minifigures, what's that about? You know, there's such a disparity there because, as I said, there's so much societal expectation about what you should be liking, what's cool and what's not, when in reality, you know, autistic people are far more likely to still be into what they just actually enjoy as opposed to what they think they shouldn't be enjoying because everyone says they should. So I feel that just that notion in itself really, unfortunately, encourages bullying because, yeah, kids are mean and not taught to just respect that if somebody else is enjoying something, let them enjoy, as long as it's not harming themselves or anyone else, of course.
Following on from what Connor says about the interest, I think that's a very big one. Again, because of society expectations, a lot of people think, well, you need to find a relationship now and have feelings for people. It's a lot of the time where you get teased because you're either not into somebody or they'll go, you know, oh, he's for you, go and ask him out and stuff. I remember one incident at my school in the early years where we were talking about interests as a class with the teacher, and somebody had to read out your interests. Don't know why. It was part of something, an exercise of something. And I remember mine being very different to the other girls, and I thought, why is it? They sort of like giggled, and I thought, why are they giggling? They're just my interests, you know. Why are they not? What's wrong with being different? Why does everybody have to be the same?
So, what Dana said, obviously, about being fat shamed and stuff, and I think a lot of obviously teenagers, obviously, because obviously, like when you're younger, a lot of kids obviously when they're quite younger are slim, and then obviously when you hit puberty, your body changes and things like that, and I think obviously when puberty happens, a lot of people get fat shamed because these changes and things happen. And I had an experience once when I was in secondary a few years ago, and this one particular lad said to me, "Oh, when's your baby due?" And it's like, well, first of all, I'm not going to call it that. So, they'll go through like obviously different spaces age, teenager, and what Connor was saying about and Robin was saying about obviously interest. And I think the expectation of the lads, especially in school, especially with being like you've got to be in sport and you've got to like love PE and love football and all this. And you can also, well, first of all, I don't like sport in general, but also with my autism and if you're very that's a voice like very sport. Like muscles and all this nonsense.
I can only examine now as an adult with knowledge about how much of a horrific sensory experience that like sports are. And guys, we're meant to be into football because that's what society says apparently. So football, that game where you run around potentially getting hit by a hard object, where you're running around, people rushing into you, mud splatting up on you. And then whenever anything happens, whether you miss or whether you score, there's loud noises all of a sudden. We're being no wonder I didn't like it, is what I'm saying, basically. So, sounds like hell.
The next one is, I feel that schools need to change their curriculum to make their PSHE or health classes more inclusive. But for those who don't know, PSHE in the UK stands for physical, personal, social, and health and economic classes. I think it might be personal or it could be physical, but who knows? But this is just what it means for those who don't know. So I think with that, who wants to go first?
I think there is, I mean, obviously, like I said, we've got the sex education that you do in sort of year 6, year and onwards. But I don't think now that there's more terms being put on TV and in social media now, I think a lot of also younger people are finding out about the different terms. I think that it does need to be included rather than just man, woman, this is what they do. There's a lot more diverse things out there that can change how you transition in life, and also like just encouragement not to have too much pressure on yourself, I think.
And Dana, do you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I mean, I went to a Catholic school, so they're already not all that up on it anyway. But I feel like any sort of improvement on it would be a vast improvement. And to like tack on from what Robin said a little bit, I think it's very much, they're almost catching up with the kids now. I think most people will be more aware of what they feel and how they're feeling and what the terminology is for themselves than the actual schools will be. And especially from my experience of it, the main memory I have of any sort of like puberty, sexual education, anything like that, was when we strapped like a pregnancy belly onto one of the boys to be like, oh, isn't it funny if you were a woman? Oh, this is how it'd be. And it didn't educate us. It was funny at the time, but it was both probably extremely like toxic and not good for anyone in the class who was questioning gender stuff. And it didn't teach us a single thing. So any sort of improvement would be a great thing.
I might jump onto that actually, Dana, just because it's funny you should say that really about like, because we both like went to Catholic schools. I think it was a division between science and religion because, you know, science and religion, they always clash. And I think that was one of the reasons why that things didn't really go ahead or made progress. But I can remember in my science lessons, when it came to reproduction and puberty, it was always on repeat from year 7 to year 8. And I just thought, oh my God, no. And especially since most of the science teachers I had were male as well, that made it even more awkward. I just feel that I think definitely a lot could have been done with this. I really could. Robin, have you got something to add?
I do, yeah. I don't know about anybody else's school, but in the school I went to, which was a mainstream secondary school, which was quite high up on the lists of representation, they were quite high on and strict on what they educated you and how they treated you. When we had certain different topics, when you go up to sixth form, there's different topics to be educated on, and one of them was health and social. And my sister did, I think it was a trial for like sixth for health and social. I don't know if they brought it into GCSE, I can't remember, but she said that it kind of includes things about disabilities and all that, but you can't actually learn it until you go on to sixth form, which I thought was, well, why not bring that forward and have it as a diverse education thing, you know?
I do feel like I'm just going to be like relaying a lot of stuff that other people have said, but as I mentioned in one of my previous answers, PSHE lessons, or you know, even science lessons where stuff like sex education was covered, it was all just a whole load of people being put into one room, explained in one way. This is sex, this is vaguely how it works, that's all we're going to tell you, really. And even with me going through the school system, I feel like quite recently those changes haven't been made to be more inclusive that you would think need to be made. So going forward, I think they just need to look again at how today's society differs from what it was like when they originally constructed this curriculum to cover all these kind of topics, just because there's so much is different now and there's so much more to cover, that they're still only concentrating on one little tiny part of it, and instead they need to look at the bigger picture. Because a whole reason why we're not adapting properly as a society is because from a young age we're not being taught about it properly, and it's that young age which is the most crucial, because it's where we're most impressionable, and that's where our mindsets start growing and start stemming from. So yeah, I think it just needs to be looked over again and be like, okay, this is what we need to do, this is what we need to change. And I feel like going forward it could definitely help just society's overall perception of, you know, the whole LGBT side of things, or even just other areas of sex in general.
I think, yes, just like in our school, PSHE support, but I think, like, you know, and I think we ended up having health and social being put on, and you know, as a GCSE and stuff. I think sometimes it could be very uncomfortable when you talk about reduction and things like that. With PSHE, they did start doing it, and then from what I remember, when I was in my school, they stopped doing it for a while and started doing it again, and it was for the first years, PSHE wasn't a thing. Like when I was in secondary, thing, and then they brought it in. But they only had like one named member of staff. So I think it's another thing of there needs to be more staff trained in that, not just one member of staff.
That's the funny thing. Being trained in PSHE is actually just being trained in how to human, which in theory, every teacher should be able to deliver. If they can teach, they should be able to deliver the basic life skills that you need to progress into adult life. That's what PSHE should be about. It's how do we move into the society that we live in? What do we need to know to evolve from being a teenager into an adult?
So we are going to be moving on to the very last question of the panel, because I thought that we need some bit of more positivity to wrap up on the panel. And the last statement is, I feel proud of who I am and I wouldn't change anything about myself compared to myself when I went through puberty.
Yes, I'm happy with how I am. But I wouldn't want to say I wouldn't change a thing, because I always want to develop and grow. And yeah, I've always got room for improvement. So things could have been made easier for me though, as a teenager, I think. And therefore I would have been more confident in myself from an earlier age.
Yeah, I'm completely happy with who I am at the moment, although there may have been points throughout puberty where I'm like, oh, you know, I don't know if I like the person I'm becoming or whatever. I've turned out in a way I'm comfortable with. And as a person I like, and as you know, similarly to what Connor said, of course there is always room for improvement. I think that goes for just about anyone. You know, there's always space to become a better person, but where I'm at the moment, is this what I'm happy with?
I'm happy with myself now, but I think that it's taken a lot of work, because I've had to really do the whole like inner child thing and almost separate like who I was as a teenager while I was going through puberty, when I was so like lost and embarrassed and scared and just like not feeling myself. And I can look back at that now and be like, she managed it though. We've gotten to where we are now. Like, that's quite impressive. I'm quite proud of that.
Yeah, I think now that obviously I didn't find the terminology of how I was feeling back then. When you look back, it is kind of like a second transition for everybody. I think when you look back, it's still room for, again, improvement, but there's some satisfaction now that you don't quite have the pressure you had. You sort of say, okay, I'll just go along as I am. Yeah.
And especially as well, Robin, that you're going through like a really big stage at the moment, really, and it's quite a big, huge achievement, really, especially during puberty, that self-identity is questionable.
So yeah, I feel like obviously I've with obviously throughout puberty, obviously like finding yourself and all these different things. And like everyone else said, I'm very like sort of happy I am, you know, with how I look. I feel like, especially like, you know, from now 18, I feel like I've found myself as a person, like, you know, like I in the past few years, like for example, this year I decided to get blonde highlights because I had like really light blonde hair when I was younger. So something I want to change and like I've done that, and obviously like I wear jewelry and like all these things. Obviously, as everyone else has said, there's obviously things change, but I feel like I've like found like I love the way I look, you know, like my style or things like that. But yeah.
I might add something onto this, even though there's I've got to do two parts left, but I will add this because I'm still I wouldn't say I feel proud of who I am just yet, but I think this is something that I really wanted to add, and I'm trying not going too emotional about it. But I realized that all this time I've been body shaming myself, and I never admitted this to anybody in my life. And when I was about 13, I used to hate my legs because I thought, oh, my calves were so fat, I can't really deal with this. And I was obese at one point when I was about a teenager as well. I mean, I'm still considered as obese, but apparently it happened that way. But then when my auntie died earlier this year, because I always used to remember her, I call it her famous comment now, because this is something with her I always got to remember, that I'll always remember, excuse me, try not to get too emotional. She always used to say to me, I am so jealous of your long legs, because she used to have like short legs, and she used about like her height was way lower than I was. And I always used to respond to her saying, no, I don't. What are you talking about? And I just feel like really embarrassed about that. But then when she passed away, it took me a month to realize that all this time I was body shaming myself. And now, with my auntie not being there, it's going to be hard, because I wish I could have said to her, I'm sorry I body shamed myself, and I really didn't mean to do that. And you're right, I should have done that. But now she's not here to listen to it, I do feel bad about it. But of course, there is something you can never go back from. Despite having all the negativity about my appearance, and I still do now, I really do, and I am trying to lose weight, but I feel that I've come a long way from it, and I still have a long way to go, but I think at the end of the day, I'm trying to love myself a bit more, especially after earlier this year. So hopefully I will feel more proud and love myself for it, but I really don't know yet for sure. Only time will tell. And I think with this, we're going to wrap up the panel here. Guys, thank you so much for coming on. So all the links to everyone who's on the panel, YouTube, social media, I will leave all links in the description box below, and check these guys out. They are absolutely amazing, and it was really great to have you guys on. So guys, thank you so much for coming on, and I'm sorry it's all a little bit of a mess up really, but well done. And I know it is a little bit of a sensitive subject, but thanks guys, you've been absolutely amazing. And yeah, I'm definitely going to wrap it up here. So next week we're going to focus on part 2, but with new different people. And until then, I'll see you next week. I hope you have a wonderful day and take care of yourselves. Bye.